Hey guys, we're back. This time we're taking a look at the Jagged Earth expansion for Spirit Island. And this one is a kind of a advanced expansion, I would say. This basically takes the game of Spirit Island up to the next level. It gives you super complicated spirits that can be customized as well as a few new mechanics and things. But you're really going to have to know the basics and know how to play the game before you can get into this. So we're going to get in and take a look at everything that's in here, and we'll go over some of the aspects that make this a bit more challenging than the base game. So first off we have here is the rule book right on top, and I do want to say, it looks like a mess in there, it does come with the full trays that were in the original game. I think it's the identical trays, but because I've sleeved some cards and things, they didn't all fit in those. I plan on taking them out, putting them in my base game box with a 3D printed insert I have in there, but that's why that's not in there, but it does come with it. And we have our rule book here, super high gloss, which is just odd. I think the original book was that way too. We have some explanations on how to use the expansion here. There are some new things in it. We have our table of contents with all of our new, we have the element markers, bunch of new things in here. Lots more of the tokens that we found in Branch and Claw, as well as these new Badland tokens. And the scenario markers I think are new in this one as well. This also bumps the game up to play up to 6 players. And all the new stuff there. There's a section specifically explaining the new items, which is cool. There's new tiles. There's a section on the Branch and Claw tokens. The new Badland tokens. Aspect cards, which basically refresh some of the older spirits to make them more comparable to some of the newer ones. And some other odds and ends here. Then we get into the new rules. There's a couple new game terms and some new rules that go with them. Isolate's a big one. What else do we got? Growth changes. Lots of things got upgraded in here. New concepts. These are new things that were changed. New play board setup options, which are kind of cool. All sorts of different board layout options, which are really neat. Rules for combining adversaries, for those of you who thought it was too easy. And then there's a section in the back on the new adversaries. There's an appendix that goes over a bunch of things in detail. And there's a small FAQ section here. And then glossary in the back, which is really nice to look up terms. And of course they have a cheat sheet on the back to go over some of the more common things so you're not constantly referencing the book. Overall pretty nice though. Combined with the base game rulebook, it tells you everything you need to know. Here we have our new map tiles. So we got 2 new tiles. Double-sided, of course. I still have always played on this side. While this side looks cooler, it is so harder to tell the differences between various terrain types sometimes. And these are just obviously made simplified on purpose, but I've always played with that side. Maybe it's just me. Into the box here, we've got tons of stuff. As I said, the insert is exactly the same as the base game. I just took a tray out because the cards are sleeved here and didn't fit back in those trays. You know, the funny part is they have plenty of room. If you just made these, well, these aren't even card trays. These are token trays. But on the card trays where they are, if they had just made these trays just a hair bigger around, sleeve cards would have fit in there. Wouldn't have been a problem. But we're going to dig through. I'm going to take these tokens out real quick and not really open every bag because these are the same ones we had in the Branch and Claw expansion. You got your beast tokens. Let's see, they're all mixed in here, so I can't find them all. There's the disease tokens. Got more fear tokens because we can play with more players now. Got more energy tokens, again, because you can play with more players now. Have more in there just to have a bigger available pool. More stripe tokens. More overgrowth tokens. These are those new Badlands tokens. I thought that when I first saw those, I thought they were fire, but I guess they're supposed to be like jagged rocks or mountains. We've got some more invaders to support our 2 new players. We've got new color tokens for our 2 new players. And these bother me because these are obviously not the same color as those. It drives me nuts. Green ones are okay though. They're still a little bit off, but it's not as bad. These are literally like orange and red to me. Maybe they're different shades of orange, but they look too different to me. And that's it for that tray. Set the cards aside for now. We'll get the rest of the tokens because there are a lot of them. We have some new villages. Again, because the player count's up higher, so we're going to have a whole set of the invaders. Which also means we have more cities. We also have a bag more of Dahan villages. Because can't just give the bad guys new stuff. More blight tokens, because again, more players. So a lot of these are just extra components, which is why I'm going through them so fast. Then we have our new isolation tokens, and these are color-coded to the various player colors. And they allow you to basically seal off a tile or a section on the tiles, which are interesting. And we have these element tokens. A lot of things generate elements that you can use in combination with the cards that you played in order to trigger your innate powers. And these are basically just a reminder way to keep track of those. Kind of nice though. We got a couple new adversaries here. We have the Tsardom of Russia and Habsburg monarchy. Not sure about that one. Probably mispronounced that, but 2 new ones of those. To go with those, we got a handful of the escalation reminder tokens. We got 3 new scenarios. Despicable Theft, Elemental Invocation, and the Great River. Always nice to have more variety in the scenarios. I have not played those yet. Sorry. Too much other stuff to go through. I think this is the last bag of tokens. These are the new scenario tokens. Then we can get on to some of the cards. Who want to do spirits first? I'll do the spirits first, then we'll come back to the cards. Because we have a whole stack of new spirits in here. And I mean a whole stack. And some of these are super interesting and super complicated. So I think we'll start on the back sides of them. Yeah, because it shows the difficulty rating over here. So we have Volcanoes Looming High. I believe he has a final ability that even levels an entire piece of the map, if I recall. Vengeance is a Burning Plague, and you're going to see most of these are going to be rated, I think moderate's the easiest one in here. Stone's Unyielding Defiance. Starlight Seeks Its Form. This is not joking when they say very high on here. This is a completely customizable spirit that we'll get into a little bit more here in a minute. Shroud of the Silent Mist. Shifting Memory of Ages. Many Minds Move as One. Lure of the Deep Wilderness. Grinning Trickster that Stirs Up Trouble. He's kind of interesting. And then Fractured Days Split the Sky. So having seen all those, look at the flip sides of them. And you can see here, these are the first ones we've gotten where these tracks are not the same. You have more down here than up there. They also, not only do you have these things that allow you to play more cards as you go up, but you're getting free elements as you go up on there. So that's kind of cool. This one again is pretty similar to the last. You also have to keep in mind up here on the growth thing, some of these are completely different than what they've been before. And this guy here is tons of elements in there, which is kind of cool. This is the one, we're going to skip to that one last because it's its own thing. So again here you can see these are not in sync. There's a lot of that going around, but yeah, there are some new things that pop up on the list down here, which are interesting as well. But you can already see how these are slightly more complicated than the base game and the branch and claw ones. Then we get to this. This is just all out of whack. So instead of your spirit tokens being in rows here, your presence tokens, they go down. You have your 2 rows down here, but you also have these up here. And as you take them off of these, you're going to be unlocking new abilities to go on your growth. So normally you get these up here. As you unlock these, you get more options. Eventually you get all of these as options as you remove them as options on what to do during your growth phase. You also get to pick 3 at a time. So you can really customize this and pick and choose how you want the spirit to work. And it's definitely a interesting aspect. It's definitely a very customizable spirit, unlike the other ones we've seen previously. Definitely worthy of that very high complexity rating. So now we're going to get into the cards, and at the start here we have a bunch of, these are kind of new for this expansion. They're reminder tokens for various, I don't know if they're for the events or the scenarios. I think they're for events. But they go out to remind you that various things have changed based on current events. And I don't know if they're double-sided or they have different, I think they have different things. I'm not sure on those. Well, it looks like they're the same, but a lot of interesting things there. Simple reminders for event cards that are in play to remind you to use their effects. Next up, we have those new aspect cards. And these are going to be used to boost up the stats on some of the old spirits to make them more comparable to some of the newer, stronger spirits. It changes their innate abilities. Maybe some of them had some innate abilities that were very circumstantial or only situational in certain areas. This gives you an option to use them more. And then we've got the different, as you can see on here, it's just a new innate ability for those various spirits. It looks like we've got one for Vital Strength of the Earth, River Surges in Sunlight, Lightning Swift Strike. There's 2 of those. And there's 2 for Shadows Flicker Like Flame. I haven't used these specific ones, but I have used one of the ones that comes in another expansion. They are kind of cool and breathe some new life into some of the older spirits. Next up, we have a handful of new fear cards. And it's always nice to have more of these. mixes in, changes it up a little bit. The base set only had just enough. I think there was like 3 or 4 extras. And so you saw the same ones come up every game, and now these give you a little bit more variety, less chance of getting those same ones to pop up every time. I think most of these pertain to the new tokens that were introduced in Blade and Claw. And like that one has the Badlands on there as well, so they did add some that pertain to just this, but overall those are cool. Can't go wrong with new fear card options. Next up, we're going to get into our spirit powers. There are so many of these that I am not going to go through each one individually. I'll show them all, but I'm not going to read them out or talk about each one individually. We're going to see if I can get the names of the spirits right, because there's so many of them. I might lay these out too to help me with that. Give me a place to put them when I'm done too. There is a lot there. I don't even know if I can get them all on camera. We're going to try. I think I got them for the most part here. So, first off, we have the Grinning Trickster. A lot of his stuff basically just causes mayhem. He definitely needs someone else to play off of. Next we have Volcano Looms High. This stuff is very destructive. You just have to be careful because it's destructive to the Dahan as well. But interesting nonetheless. Next we have Shroud of the Silent Mist. And I apologize for any glare on these. I do sleeve my games because we do play them quite often, and cards tend to get beat the crap out of if they're not sleeved. Not too familiar with that spirit. I have not played that one with or against it yet, or with somebody else playing it, so not too familiar there. Next we have Vengeance as a Burning Plague. Poor little guy gets a bad rap. He's got some interesting abilities in there. And Fractured Days. I know their names are longer than that, but I'm not trying to remember them all. They are cool names, though. I'll give them credit for that. Whoever came up with the names for all this stuff. And again, you can see from all the text on these, they're slightly more complicated than some previous spirits. Next is Shifting Memories of Ages. Interesting stuff in there. Next is Starlight Seeks Its Form. And that's again that really complicated customizable one on the end. Super interesting options in here. Definitely all dependent though on what are those growth options that you unlock on there. Next we have Stone's Unyielding Defiance. I'm going to assume these are going to be a lot of defensive. There's actually quite a bit of offense in there too. Next we have Lure of the Deep Wilderness. Some interesting manipulation on these. Crowd control type things. And then the last is the Many That Move as One. I like the occasional ones that have an extra card in there. There are a couple that have more cards. Trickster, I think, is another one that has some extra cards. Go on to some other cards now. We have the new event cards. These were introduced in the Branch and Claw expansion. They were kind of a mixed thing there, as people didn't like the randomness and unpredictability that they add to the game, where normally you could plan ahead by looking at the board and saying, okay, this is what the invaders are going to be doing over the next couple turns. These cards add in a little bit of unpredictability to that by making various things happen. And some people liked it, some people didn't like it. There's more options here. I think it about doubles the size of the deck of these. The nice thing about them is that they're completely optional. You don't have to use them, so you can pick or choose if you want to add them into your game and see what happens with it. I have not actually played with the event cards yet, any of them, even the ones from the previous. We've been trying to get our heads around some of the new spirits, and then we're going to add these into our play. But if you're somebody who plays a lot and the games are getting kind of repetitive and things are coming up the same way, it's because you can predict what's going to happen. And once you've got a good game plan down, a lot of it is just timing and staging things up. Adding these to your game will change things up a bit and get rid of some of that predictability and make things have some surprises in there that you need to pay attention to. Next thing we have are the minor powers, and there's a whole new pile of minor power cards here. Definitely way too many to go through. I'm not even going to pretend to go through them all here, but I'll flip through a few just to show you. A lot of them have abilities that pertain to new mechanics and things that were added to the game. Like there we got something about adding Badlands. But yep, tons more variety and things to change up your games. The nice thing is the more of these you add in, you won't necessarily come across the same powers from game to game. If the deck's big enough, you're only drawing so many, chances are there's some that you're not even going to see each game. And that I like the variety and the ability to change things up, not always see the same cards come out every game. On the same note, it does slow you down if you have some favorites in there you like to fish for. The chances of you getting a specific power that you want go down exponentially the more and more cards you add to those decks. Then we have some reminder cards here for the players. Oddly enough, because this expansion adds up to 6 players, they gave you 6 of these, but they didn't give you the extra ones for the base reminder cards that were in the base game for the 2 new players. That's kind of an oversight, I think. But one side of these, we have a thing talking about the choice event cards. And on the flip side, we have a thing talking about the various tokens. These kind of replace the ones that came with Branch and Claw because they also include the Badlands on there. So you can use these and set those other ones aside if you want. We have a bunch of new island cards here. And again, these I think are all exactly the same on the front side here. It's all what happens when you get to the point where there's a blighted island and you flip them over. These completely change from card to card. Gives you a bunch more variety. I love these over the fact there were only 2 in the original game. Now you have a nice stack of them that go through. It means you never know, you shuffle these up and you draw one, and you never know what's actually going to happen when it flips over until you get to that point and it flips over. They even have a couple in here that when you flip them over are still healthy islands with different things. So these are kind of cool to mix in among the others. And depending on what comes up, can change what happens if you ever get to that point where the island becomes blighted and you have to flip that over. And then finally here we have our major powers. And again, there's a nice little chunk of these. And again, way too many to go through each one individually, but lots of new abilities in here. Same thing as with the minor powers. Having more of these gives you more variety. The same ones aren't going to pop up from game to game. Now, some of these are pricey to be able to power. But it's always cool to have more and more options to choose from of these so that the same ones don't come up every game. And the original deck of major powers in the first one was probably about that big. It was kind of small, I thought. And between this and the ones that were in Branch and Claw, you have a nice selection of major powers now. Boosts that up there so that your chances of ever seeing the same ones twice in multiple games is really slim, and I like that aspect. So there's a look at everything that comes in the Jagged Earth expansion. As I didn't really show here, but in the bottom you have your normal tray. This was the exact same tray that was in the base game. Your adversary cards go down here. There's a section here for some miscellaneous stuff. Your small cards, large cards. Again, once they're sleeved, they don't fit in here anymore, which kind of sucks. All the player boards fit in there. And then you had two trays on top to put various tokens in. And the board tiles laid across the top of that, and it was good to go. A functionable insert for what it is, except for the fact that the cards don't fit once they're sleeved. I managed to take out one tray. I used these for tokens down here and actually had the cards and baggies put across here for now, temporarily. That works just fine. So if you do sleeve your cards, that's an option. But I plan on putting everything into the base game box using a nice 3D printed insert I found. And I'll be doing a video on that when I get to it. But as I said, that's a look at everything that comes in the expansion. The amount of new spirits in there is just crazy. The pretty much a little bit of everything in here. The being able to up it to 6 players is nice. I do wish these components were matching colors though. They show up, I think it shows up even more on camera than with the eye, but they're definitely not the same color. So you have a lot of these bags which are just extra components. These are new player tokens. These are all extra. This is extra. These are all extra. But then you do have some new stuff in here as well. The Badlands tokens were introduced in this. The Elemental Reminder tokens there. The Scenario tokens here. The Isolation tokens. And it's just a lot of cool stuff in a package here. The big thing to this game is, do you need it? And if you're a casual player and you only play the game once in a while and you're really, it's fun, but you're playing solo is another big one, or you're just not a huge diehard fan of it, you can probably skip this one. The Badlands are really the only thing, well, the Isolation are like the only real new mechanics they added. The majority of the meat in this one are the new powerful spirits. That being said, they are very advanced, and a casual player's probably not going to need them, not ever going to use them. If you're a die-hard player who's mastered the strategy and you win every game and you can play solo with even the weak spirits and you're doing fine, then this is something to look into, because these new spirits are much more complicated and they do require a lot more thinking and a lot more effort planning put into them to get a good outcome out of it. That being said, if maybe you have a mix of players where you're really good at the game and you're playing with new people, you might be able to pick this up and mix and match, and you use one of the more advanced spirits and they use one of the more basic spirits. Keeps the game balanced, and it gives you a challenge personally because you're using one of the more difficult spirits. So there's a lot of options in there, but definitely unlike Branch and Claw, I think was kind of a one that you should get if you're a fan of the game, if you're playing it. It added some new mechanics that should have been in the base game, but they left out. And that one felt like you really needed to get that to get the most out of the game. This one is definitely best reserved for, like I said, advanced players, diehard fans, people who are looking to min-max the best strategy out of something. I think this is going to appeal to them. Whereas your casual player, it may be a little bit too much. So keep that in mind when deciding if it's something worth picking up for yourself or not. It's definitely not for everyone. And I think there's a new expansion coming soon, so we'll see how that one balances out. Hopefully that's somewhere in the middle. But this is definitely made for the advanced and hardcore player, where the previous expansion was made for everybody. So just know what you're getting into when you look into this. It is definitely not for beginners. If you're just starting out on Spirit Island, you can skip this one. You're going to want to learn all the basics, get everything down packed before you dip your toes in here, because there is a lot going on in this one. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for our look at the Jagged Earth expansion for Spirit Island. I hope it helps you decide if it's something worth picking up and adding to your collection, or maybe something worth waiting for down the line, getting used to the base game and things before you step up to this. It's totally up to you, but I hope I helped you, informed you a little bit on that. As always, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.